but I'll tell you, you will see better results if you scaled it
Mhm.
back.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Truth Talks, the podcast that brings you real strategies for sustainable fitness transformations. As always, I'm Courtney, and this is my brother, Paris. And today we're going to tackle one of those sayings that kind of irritates me, but everyone in the fitness industry, I shouldn't say everyone, it's prominent in the fitness industry, the idea of like, no days off. And I'm like, okay, can we please talk about that for a second? Because I see that too often. And it needs to kind of be debunked or clarified what we mean by no days off.
It's interesting, right? Because I think a lot of people are kind of on or off with their fitness goals, right? And when they're on, they're like really on. It's like 7 days a week and the cardio and, no foods that are considered outside of this list of foods and all this. And then a month later, you're like, hey, how are things going? And they're like, I got busy or, I couldn't keep up with it or whatever with everything going on. And you're like, well, you know, not surprised. I don't think
Right.
I couldn't stick to 7 days a week of weight training
Me
for a
neither.
variety of reasons that we'll get into. But it's like, I think, that mentality you'll run yourself into the ground.
It's probably the biggest thing actually stopping people from being consistent and for falling for that kind of on, off, on, off, on,
Mhm.
off. And so I think the idea of never taking a day off isn't necessarily about never taking a day off from the gym, but maybe about never taking a day off from the mindset of, okay, I'm
Mhm.
committed to this goal. Because, like,
Yeah,
you don't want to stop being committed to a goal. But when you think of it as, like, these are the only actions I have to do and I have to do them all every day, and especially with workouts, that can be kind of exhausting and honestly
definitely.
just isn't feasible.
Yeah, I think we should carry like similar mindsets almost every single day, right? Of like, okay, we're focused, we have this goal, we're committed, all these things. But yeah, as you said, it doesn't mean that we're taking every single one of those actions every single day. And nor is that kind of productive.
Yeah, exactly. So today we're going to clarify essentially like what do we mean when we're talking about working out every day, right? And why is that actually not just not necessary, but also sometimes actually unproductive. So
Yes.
why you shouldn't probably work out every day. Spoiler alert, that's the answer to today's question. But I think before we can really go into the details of our perspective on on today's question, which is, in case you didn't read the title, should you really work out every day? We need to clarify what do we mean by working out every day, right? And
Hmm.
I think the biggest distinction here is daily movement versus structured training. And how are we actually describing workouts in the context of today's conversation?
Yeah. So when we say workouts, we're going to say resistance training, weight training or with cables or machines or anything that is lifting up heavy things and putting them back down repeatedly. We'll consider that training every day. Okay. And anecdotally, when I first started training, I think I was training almost 7 days a week. So
Mhm.
there was a point in my fitness journey, probably for a couple of years, where I did literally train every single day of the week. Now I was
And
younger and I didn't have like, the same stress or responsibilities I have
yeah.
now. But yeah, and back then I didn't make even close to the gains that I made when I started training even 4 days a week.
And
Right.
how many days a week are you training now? Because I'm on a 4-day split, and I've been training 4 days a week for like there was a point in time where I was on a 5-day split, and way back when I was 6 days as well. But I've been on 4 days a week since at least like 5 years. You?
Hmm.
What are you on?
I'm on five days right now. I kind of fluctuate depending on the program that my coach gives me between 4 and 5 days. So I've run 4 days for a long time. I've run 5 days for a long time. And depending on what we're working on and what's written on the paper, that's what I'm hitting. But yeah, throughout my whole competition prep in 2024, I was all 4 days a week training. Very low volume too, which would surprise people.
Interesting. Yeah.
And then in my building phase, we started with 4, then went to 5 for a bit, then back to 4. So it really depends on, what your training's, how you organize your training. But yeah, 4 or 5 days a week is great for me, I would
Mhm.
say. Either one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when we think about today's question, like, should you work out, every single day? Neither one of us works out every single day, right? But we wanted to clarify what we meant by working out because if you're listening, like, there's other types of movement that someone else might consider exercise or working out, right? So,
Yeah.
for example, like, we're both on lifting programs, resistance training programs, 4 and 5 days a week, respectively, right? But when we think about, like, there's other things that I do, for example, I play volleyball once a week, which I don't consider that a workout by my personal definition, but is something else that I do, right? Or there's, some of our clients also like to run or do other forms of physical activity, biking, things like that. So when we're answering today's question of should you really work out every single day, we're going to explain why we don't think that resistance training every day is effective. But there's also like the question of, okay, so should we be exercising every single day? Thoughts on that?
I definitely think it's totally fine to exercise every single day, especially if you consider walking exercise,
Hmm.
then absolutely. Like I'm a big proponent of walking. We pretty much have a step count goal for every single one of our clients, I would say, or at least a range. So I'm a big proponent of some sort of activity every single day,
Hmm.
whether it's
Hmm.
biking, walking, a sport, recreation activity like I don't know. What do people like doing? Pickleball, like whatever
Yes,
it is, right?
that's so big right now. We have
Right?
some pickleball playing clients too.
Exactly. So I don't mind saying, yeah, we should definitely move the body every single day for sure.
Hmm.
But in terms of like weight training, for sure, I would say the sweet spot is 3 to 5 times a week.
Hmm.
Okay, and
Yeah.
yeah, 3 to 5 times a week.
Yeah. And if you are looking to figure out, like, okay, where in that 3 to 5 makes sense for you, we did a whole episode on how many times a week you should work out. So
Yes.
we'll drop that one in the links below. We talk more specifically about 3 versus 4 versus 5 day splits and stuff. But I think what you're saying around moving your body daily is still very important because we are not meant to live sedentary lifestyles. And I do think that when we started this conversation with this idea of the all or nothing thinking around, I gotta work out every single day.
Hmm.
I think what happens is so many people feel that way because they see the alternative to of like a day of not working out as just being I'm just going to veg. I'm going to rot on my couch. And that's what creates I think those major swings in like momentum where you're either like all in or all out, right? And I think the daily movement is actually the gray zone that people need. So figuring out okay, well, if I'm not going to the gym today, is there another activity that I'm doing? Am I still getting my steps in? Like that sort of stuff, it really
Hmm.
breaks that all or nothing thinking attached to this idea of working out every single day.
Absolutely. I can respect the mentality of people that want to go and train every single day because they're like, okay, like I'm so motivated, I want to do this. Um, but I'll tell you, you will see better results if you scaled it back.
Hmm.
And for those
Yeah.
people who are like, 7 days a week, a lot of time, and we can kind of jump into this, like they're just not training properly, right? Like we've even had clients who would train 6, 7 days a week. And then when they start training properly, now they can only recover from four,
I'm gonna
you
press
know?
pause on that and make people wait to get the reasons for
Yeah,
why, because
for
I
sure.
do think there's something else that you spoke to that I want to dive into before we
Hmm.
get to that. So, like, please keep watching so you know why it's more productive to train fewer times a week. We're getting there. The main thing, though, that you touched upon is that mindset piece of like respecting the idea that people do want to do everything in their power,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think what that alludes to is the origins of this question to begin with. When we're trying to understand, like, should you really work out every day? Why do people feel like they need to work out every day? There's two key reasons. And the first one is what you're talking about with the mindset of I genuinely want to do everything in my power to get the best
Hmm.
results possible. And
Hmm.
I think that's highly positive, right? That's coming from a really good place. That's coming from a driven place, an ambitious place. So there's a category of people who are trying to work out every day for the best possible reasons for themselves. They want to see their potential and they don't want to leave any stone unturned. And I think for those people, that's where we'll talk about, making sure that we're redefining what the best possible progress actually looks like
Hmm. Hmm.
as a byproduct of time efficiency with your training, right? So
Definitely.
that's one camp. That's the I want to do everything in my power. But the other, I think, origin of this question of like wanting to work out every day is actually coming from a place of anxiety, right? It's like, well, what happens if I don't work out? Am I gonna ruin my gains? Am I not gonna make progress? Am I gonna fall completely off the wagon?
Is the fat
Right?
gonna come back on? Is
Yeah, exactly. And so that's really where that this question comes from. It's either doing everything in my power to squeeze out every potential result, or I'm so worried about the alternative of if I don't work out every day.
Hmm. Hmm.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. The second one?
Either
Or
one.
yeah, 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 no, totally, totally. We're gonna kind of debunk why you shouldn't later, so I keep wanting to jump right
I know,
into that.
you're eager. I'm doing the
Um,
setup part, but
yeah,
because I want to
but
see,
no,
I'm actually very curious. Like, if somebody's listening to this, and is toying with this question, which camp do you fall into? Like, drop a comment below and tell us. Like, do you feel like you have more of that? Oh, I'm anxious about scaling it back, or do you feel like you're like, I just want to do everything in my power? Curious to know because the point of us kind of talking about these sorts of things and the origins of these questions is to try to really make it known that this is relatable. This is how people genuinely feel. And so the more we can learn about how you're feeling as a listener, the better we can try our best to help you out.
Yeah, and to be fair, there's one more, camp that I used to follow, and I just freaking love training. And
Yeah, good
honestly,
point.
I think I even used to love training more when I was younger than I do now.
Mhm.
To be completely honest, if I'm being honest, I still love training absolutely, but like I feel like sometimes there's just so much in my brain that I'm not as present when I'm training as I used to be when I was younger and kind of worry free. Um, so I just used to love training so much that any day I was not going to gym, I was like, this freaking sucks, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're
like I
like, "What do I
haven't
even
gotten
do with my time?"
my yeah, my arms haven't gotten pumped up today, you know?
Yeah.
So that's like the other camp of people that just love, they love it so much.
That's a really good point. Okay. So let's dive into why why more isn't always better. So I think it's kind of clear from the conversation so far that we do not believe you should work out every day, right? In terms of structured resistance training workouts. Daily movements, yes, absolutely. Get those steps in, get your feet moving, get your butt off the couch. But when it comes to resistance training, there are a number of reasons why, like we said from the beginning, it's not only not necessary, because there's a difference between not necessary and actually becoming counterproductive, right? Because to a certain point, it's not necessary, but then to another point, it's not even productive. It becomes counterproductive and can actually take away from the results you can get.
Totally.
Let's start with the it's not necessary part. So, like, why is it actually not necessary to work out every day?
So let's say whatever the dose, quote unquote, of like training that you need to do to
Hmm.
make progress, you can easily get that within 3 to 5 sessions per week.
Hmm.
Okay. So adding more dose, it's like, what if I said, hey, this, I don't know, 10 milligrams of Advil is like what you need to get rid of your headache. And then you're like, well, I'm going to take 5 of them. It's like, okay, well, there's no need. You would have gotten that, that there's probably even side effects for that,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
or
Yeah,
risks.
I'm sure
But
there's side effects, but
but
even
it's like,
there's
yeah,
side effects, but also it's like it's just gonna cost you more because you're gonna have to restock your Advil more often, and you're not getting any additional,
there's no benefit. Yeah.
relief. Yeah, the relief is there,
So
right?
it's like a bell curve, right? Like people get far up it, but then you can also go over the other end kind of thing.
Mhm, mhm.
But yeah, it's like you can get what you need out of 3 to 5 sessions as long as you're organizing them appropriately. So I think I'll say this: if you can train 7 days a week, you're either not organizing your training properly, okay, you're not training hard enough, or you're just doing the wrong stuff. Like, and that's how I know that those kind of boot camps, classes, workout group classes don't do anything is because people will literally do them 7 days a
Every
week,
day.
sometimes even twice a day. It's like, how can they really be that effective if you can recover that quickly? Like, I'm sorry, jumping around in a hula hoop or like,
Jumping around in the
doing
hula hoop. I just
doing
got a
some freaking
picture of that.
weird, I don't know, like made up exercise that looks cool, like, yeah, of
Mhm,
course you can recover from it because it's not doing anything. Hate to
mhm.
break it to you.
No, that's very fair, right? Okay, so it's not necessary because you can do enough, and, like, listen, preface, neither one of us is the person that usually settles for just enough, right? But when we are talking about are we getting the impact of the results that we want? Yes, we can do that in 3 to 5 training sessions a week for sure, if it's well organized. If it
Yes.
is structured with exercise selection that makes sense, if it's structured with the number of sets, reps, volume, training volume is a concept we've talked about in the past, right? If all that is actually organized, you can
Intensity,
do
everything. Yeah.
intensity. Yeah. And when we're talking about results that we're seeking here, we're talking about anything body composition related. So that can be maintaining muscle during a fat loss phase. It can be building muscle. It can be building strength. Well, that's not body composition, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Strength training oriented. So 3 to 5 training days a week is sufficient when you have a program that is designed appropriately. Okay. So that's why it's not necessary. Is there anything else around why it's actually just not necessary before we move into the counterproductive piece?
No, I think I'm ready for the,
Okay.
yeah.
So more is not always better. We say that time and time again. So let's say, okay, we can do 3 to 5 and cover our bases, get the progress we want, get the results we want. Then I know there's somebody out there going, well, but if I do more, can I still get more? Right. And so at a certain point, there is not only a point of diminishing returns, but doing more actually takes away
Hmm.
from your ability to be quote unquote as optimal as possible. Right. And I
Yes,
think
for
there's a
sure.
few different things. The first one is perhaps the most obvious, and that is actually physical recovery, which is what
Hmm.
you were talking about when you said, okay, well, if you're doing these group classes, you can do 2 in a day. I don't know. So let's unpack the physical recovery side of that and how doing more can actually impede recovery, which can impede results.
Yeah. So if you're training hard and your technique is good and you're doing enough dose of training, in a session, your body will need to recover because it's kind of disruptive to your system. Your body's like, "Oh, whoa, all hands on deck. We got to repair this. We got to make some moves around here." So if you're just coming again and again and again and again for sessions, like you're not actually fully recovering, and you're probably not going to make the same gains that you would have. Like you're going to find your performance will just come to a stall or even drop off. That's when you're
Hmm.
really not recovered. You probably get some aches and pains. Your connective tissue will start acting up. I know even me, if I'm pushing hard for too long and like I have other life stressors, like my lower back starts acting up. Like even
Hmm.
right now, my lower back's been sore all day. That's when I know perfectly timed deload week coming up as well, which is great. But it's just like you're not going to be effectively recovering. And one of the biggest things in training, everybody said progressive overload, right? Progressing in your training over time,
Hmm.
you aren't going to be able to do that if you're not effectively recovering, because the whole premise of progressive overload is not we are forcing more reps or more weight or etc over the weeks. It's that we can do more reps or weight over the weeks because of the adaptations we've already made.
Right. And to make
Yeah.
adaptations, so if we're talking about preserving muscle or building muscle, those adaptations in your body, meaning your body is responding to your training, actually are the things that like require recovery.
Yeah,
Right? Like
absolutely.
if you think about it, people think muscle is like built during your workout. It's not. It's built after
Hmm.
your workout when you've refueled, you've slept, and the tissue can actually work on repairing itself, right? So that is a really, really important piece. If you're training every single day, you're not recovering.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for people to understand that recovery sometimes is longer than we might expect when we're talking about muscle recovery. Sometimes that's even up to 72 hours. And I think we all have those specific muscle groups that sometimes take a bit longer. Like, for example, biceps might feel
Hamstrings.
ready to go the next day. Hamstrings. Yes, you just
Yeah.
said hamstrings, right?
Yeah.
Hamstrings sometimes can take like a couple days, right? Which is again why it's so important to have a structured training program that actually balances the recovery time of different muscle groups to make sure that when you do go in to hit the next session that's hitting that muscle group, you are recovered. So, like you said, you can progress on your lifts, you can apply progressive overload, you can continue training with intensity, and you cannot risk more, connective tissue disruption or other fatigue that's not necessary.
Exactly. Perfect. And I also want to touch on the psychological recovery piece. Can I say that as well?
Please, that's so
Yeah.
important.
So we talked physical, right? But hard training is hard, right?
Yeah.
Would you believe it? And with that hard comes a certain amount of just psychological drive that you need to push. Like if you're actually training hard, like I don't mean, listen, I look around the gym, people, A, don't know how to organize their freaking training, B, are not training hard enough or with good execution. Like seriously. And I'm sorry to say that, but people do not, like, they probably have like 10 reps in the tank a lot of times, what I see. And I'm not just saying that. Okay.
Meaning you can just keep going
Um,
for 10 more reps and
yeah,
you're still feeling good.
exactly.
That's not
So
quite training hard enough.
that's
Mhm.
not what we're talking about. But let's say you are training hard enough, it takes a lot of psychological drive. Okay. Like you have to kind of, get in the zone, focus, and push. So that takes recovery too.
Mhm.
And, I'm sure there's a certain point where sometimes when you need like a deload week or like a lighter period of training where you're like, man, I can't even look at the dumbbells. Like I'm psychologically fatigued from lifting, right? So if you were actually training hard enough 7 days a week, like your psychological fatigue would be so high, you would look at the dumbbells and be disgusted by them. You'd be like, "My goodness, those
Yeah.
dumbbells, I hate you. I don't even want to come close to even looking at you." Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. And I think what you actually just opened the door to like another benefit of not training every day is like you actually preserve more of that psychological drive, right? Because it's kind of like this idea of if we have to do something every single day, it doesn't have as much significance. But when you
Hmm.
actually reduce the frequency, each session becomes a little bit more important and you actually become a little bit more, I'm going to use the word motivated, even though we have, stipulations around that. But like you feel more readiness to go and hit that
Yeah,
session.
that's it. Psychologically ready. Yeah.
Yes, because you're like not already like, oh, I've just been doing this thing for 7 days in a row already. You kind of actually have that like restored readiness when you take that
Hmm.
time off. You mentioned deload weeks. That's a different concept that we can explore at another point in time, but it's like an intentional reduction in your total training volume, or sometimes that looks like going fewer days a week. But when we come off of those weeks, we do feel that readiness restored. So you can think about that on like a micro level of each week. Let's say you come off of a rest day and you're like, oh, I'm ready to go tomorrow. Like I actually
Hmm.
want to go to the gym again. And
Yes.
sometimes we don't want to go to the gym. That's the reality. But like if you're training every single day, that I don't want to go feeling becomes a lot
Yeah.
more dominant.
Definitely. And let's make our analogy here because I got a couple of them. The first one is, imagine if you, even if you loved your job, imagine if you went to work every single day, no weekends.
Like no weekends. Yeah.
That's what you're, would you be more productive, or would there be a point where your productivity at work probably drops off a cliff? Your psychological drive to like show up in a good way probably goes down, even if you like your job. So why are we doing that with training?
Good
Right?
point.
Same
Mhm.
thing with like a NASCAR driver. It's like there's a reason why they take the pit stops. You're just going to keep going around. Eventually, you're going to run out of oil, gas. Your tires are going to, be all ripped apart, and the engine's going to overheat or something. I don't know about cars, but you know what I mean. So it's like,
Yeah.
why do we think that we're going to somehow be thriving if we never take a day off?
No, it's so true. I think the, psychological piece of that is so misunderstood. And what we started off with too is like the reason that this question came about was because there are two different psychologies. So it makes sense that psychology is going to be part of the answer, right? So I think if you're in that camp of I want to do everything in my power to make as much progress as possible, which was that first psychology we spoke to, then knowing and being reassured that doing everything in your power means showing up in the sessions with as much intensity and drive and willingness to be there. It's just shifting what it means to do everything in your power to be productive, right? And you kind of use that to your advantage. And if you are somebody who's anxious about, okay, well, if I take time off, then I think then you can use that psychology to also kind of, I don't want to say cure, but maybe wane that anxiety. If you're saying, okay, well, I am worried about time off, so therefore, when I am showing up, I got to make sure that I'm balancing out that time off or making that time off feel productive because I worked really hard in the gym.
Usually, also, if you're anxious on missing rest day, you're probably just miseducated or
That's
around
true.
like what actually
Yeah.
matters. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
usually, it's just a lack of education or awareness of like what truly matters.
Right. It's so
Um,
true.
yeah.
It's so true. Yeah. And then I would just want to touch on the third psychology that you had added in, which was really smart. If you love training, you preserve your love of training by kind of
Yes.
making it not an everyday thing. Right. So
Totally.
I think all three of those psychologies that underpin this question of should you really work out every day are aided by, having some intentional rest days and making sure that you are selective with which days you're training and what you're doing on
Totally.
those sessions.
Awesome.
Okay. Amazing. The other thing that we need to talk about is the whole premise of this podcast is around sustainable fitness transformation, and we talk a lot about lifestyle integration and making fitness part of our lives, right? When it comes to working out every day, that is a huge commitment in life, right? Because now you got to spend the time in the gym, commuting to the gym, getting ready, showering after, whatever it is. So we do need to say that not training every day is also kind of an enhancer of life. You can get the best of both worlds. You can get the life balance. I don't like the term balance for other reasons, but let's say
Hmm.
you get the life stuff
Hmm.
happening and you get intentional training.
Totally. Like we talked about just total mental bandwidth, and training does take up some of that if you're doing it properly. And then also just like time wise, yeah, it does take up time. Let's call it like it is, right? So if I was training 7 days a week, like something would drop out of my life that I don't personally want to drop, right? Whether it be a certain amount of work that I could be putting into the business or serving our clients, or even just little things like chores and laundry and like mopping the floors. Like those are things that you need sometimes on your rest day. You're like, all right, that time I usually would have spent at the gym. There's this project for work that I've been delaying. I'm going to tackle it, or I need to clean up the house, or there's the laundry or something like that, or I got to go get my car fixed, like
Mhm.
whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's like those rest days you can kind of catch up on life a little bit, um, versus like every single day you're just training, 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 training.
Yeah, exactly. And so it makes it more sustainable too, right? Because
Hmm.
if let's say you're like, okay, well, I'm somebody who wants to work out every day. I'm going to go to the gym every day, right? And then you have a life thing happen where you're like, okay, well, my usual gym time slot, I'm gonna use your car appointment example.
Hmm.
What happens? Right. Versus now, if you're somebody who trains, let's say 4 days a week, then you're scheduling your car appointment. You're like, great, I can do it on this day. And I still like it does not impact my training schedule at all. Right. So
100%. Yeah,
that it's not only more flexible, it's just way more achievable, way more feasible, and way more sustainable for you to continue with that long term.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
Mhm.
Yeah, 100%. I think it always goes back to mindset on like consistency over intensity. And just because we have so many conversations with people that have been all in, then all out, then all in, then all out, and they're making race the same progress over and over again. It's like hey, imagine if you just train 3 days a week for 45 minutes for the rest of your life,
Oh, yeah.
right? Imagine how where you'd be in your fitness journey compared to if you did the 7 days, then nothing, then 7 days. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
guys,
no,
3 days a week for the rest of your life. Make that commitment. 3 to 4 days a week. Okay,
yeah.
let's
And
go.
if you need help getting started with like, what do I do if I'm training 3 or 4 days a week? Send us a DM. We have resources. We will send them to you and we'll get you started. Okay. Okay. So I think we've kind of touched on this along the way, but I want to just quickly like rapid fire. What is the problem with training every day? Because I think we've given some good reasons in terms of it's not necessary, it can be counterproductive. But if we were to say, here are the problems with trying to work out every single day that led us to kind of identify this conversation as a topic we wanted to tackle, where would you start?
Yeah. So again, we got to remind we did a full deep dive podcast into saying like how many days you should train.
Mhm.
So we'll definitely
Go
link
check
that.
that out.
But in terms of relevant to this podcast, I think it was like if you're doing things properly in the gym, right, you will not be recovered fully session to session. Okay. Um, Physically, and then also psychologically, like your psychological drive for training will drop off a cliff. There's also a greater risk of injury if we're training every day, if we're training hard and properly again every single day. And then there's also things like, work and life demands that you're going to have a tough time keeping up with, based on time and also just psychological energy and mental bandwidth throughout the whole course of the week. So those are all like really, really important things to think about. What I'm missing one. What's the
There's one
last one?
more that I wanted to talk about,
Yeah.
which is um, you impose guilt on the rest days. And I think that is a negative psychology that comes into play. If your expectation for yourself is that you're going to work out every single day, then when you don't work out, you're now perceiving a gap in what you should have done versus what you actually did. And that means that rest days become kind of sources of guilt. And I think when you do train 3 to 5 days a week, those rest days become not only intentional, not only relieving. I feel massively relieved when I don't have it on my mind of, okay, I have to get to the gym today, but also they become very productive in themselves, whether that's productive life wise with the chores and stuff like you talked about, or productive for recovery. And I think if you want more mindsets on rest days specifically, we did do an episode on should you eat less on rest days, and we talked a lot
Mm,
about making your rest days just as purposeful. So I'm going to drop that link below as well. But I do definitely think that that is a negative psychological effect of trying to work out every day, is you create an unrealistic expectation that leads to negative psychologies.
totally. It's kind of like I'll call myself out. It's kind of like entrepreneurs and taking a day off work.
Right? Yeah,
It's the
exactly.
same mindset. Like you feel guilty of like I didn't work enough today. It's like, well, you don't have to work every day. It's the same. It's the
I
same.
so relate. That's why I have Justin in my life. Well, I have Justin in my life for a million beautiful
That's the
reasons.
only reason why.
But he
Yeah,
reminds me, you do not have to work every spare minute if you're not doing something else. You know what I mean? He reminds me of that,
really,
which is
this is
which is
news to
healthy.
me. This is no, just
It's
kidding.
Paris is coming after him now. Yeah. So okay, Paris. So people are thinking, okay, should I really work out every day? And we've kind of given them some solid reasons why no,
Mhm.
and like some direction to go listen to a couple other episodes. But how do we reframe the question? What kind of questions should people actually answer for themselves now that we've answered this one and said, you don't need to work out every day? I'm going to throw one out there and then I'm going to pass it to you. What do you think?
Go for it.
So I think the first question is asking yourself, how many days a week actually makes sense for me, right?
Mhm.
We talked about 3 to 5. We're linking you to that other episode that we did that explores that specifically. It's in the description below. Don't miss it. Some specific practical guidelines for you to decide 3, 4, or 5 days a week, but choose what makes sense for you. So that's the first question I would recommend people start to answer. What would you throw out there next?
Yeah, I think it's most of the things that we did talk about in that podcast
Mhm.
for sure. And it's just like weighing, just weighing the different variables of like recovery, time, lifestyle management, mental bandwidth, stress management, like all these things, kind of like all those umbrella of variables is just like taking them each into account and trying to and then crafting something.
Yeah, which is like, what can you realistically commit to? What can you recover from? How much time do you actually have? And you kind of build it up from
Hmm.
there, right? I think also asking yourself, what kind of results are you really seeking?
Hmm.
We're talking about everything through the lens of getting consistent and delivering that quote unquote minimum dose of training, right? So I would actually ask yourself, what kind of results are you expecting, and that can help you also tailor your training program, your number of training days a week, that sort of thing.
but I would say start simple first and then work your way up. Like even with new clients, sometimes it'll be like if I put them on a 3 or 4 day split, they're like, "Oh, I think I can handle another training session or whatever." And then like a few weeks later, like, "Well, I'm glad that we were on the 3 or 4 day split because I would have missed it, or like I'm still sore or whatever." Right. So
Hmm.
because again, like we've even had people that have come in and been training 6 days a week, and then once we start training properly, then we go to 4 or 5 days because they realize they can't recover from it anymore, right? So I
Yeah,
think it's really you need to make sure that you're doing things properly, and you might not need as many training days as you think. Yeah.
it's true. So there's two kind of takeaways here in what you're saying. The first is the quality piece should not be overridden by a pursuit of quantity, right?
Hmm.
That's number one. And the number two thing that I keep coming back to is trying to work out every day is probably the reason why you're not consistent with your workouts, right?
Mm.
Because you don't have a plan for, like you were just saying, people are scaling it back and they're staying more consistent, right? That sort of thing. Because you don't actually have a plan to articulate, okay, well, what does it look like if I'm not training every day? So I think it's just really encouraging people to seek out structure. That's really what we're
Totally.
what we're saying, right?
Totally.
Because trying to work out every day is, if it gets us into that trap of, oh, I'm relying on discipline, or I have to feel motivated every day to make it happen, and I have to have this continuous momentum, versus really saying, what kind of structure do I need long
Hmm.
term, short term and long term, to be consistent, and what are you defining as consistency? That's the most important thing.
Instead of being people that say, "I'm trying to get back at," or "I'm trying to do this," or "I'm trying to do that," how about we say, "I am the person that has this plan and I am doing this
Hmm.
because I have the structure."
Yeah.
Like I just like, "Oh, I'm trying to get back at it." It's like, really? What, like, do you
What are
have
you
some sort of
trying?
game plan? Nope. I just gonna try. Great. As Yoda says, do or do not. There is
There
no
is
try.
no try.
All right. So let's stop trying and let's start doing based on what Yoda is inspiring us with.
Yeah, gotta love Yoda. No better
I
way to
know.
end an episode than with a
And
quote
Yoda.
from the great Yoda. Uh,
We've been watching so much Star Wars because the Mandalorian. We went with our stepbrother. He had like a Mandalorian party for anybody that's a Star Wars fan because he's like a massive Star Wars fan. And we watched the Mandalorian. So Tara and I were like binge watching Star Wars, and I binge watched the Mandalorian. So we could like understand what was going on. Yeah,
oh, that's cool. And
yeah.
I think you got to keep binge watching that, because if it brings out more Yoda quotes, I'm here for it. But
I mean, he's not in the
it's
Mandalorian,
Grogu,
but
right?
like
Grogu.
Grogu's in, yeah, but he's so cute. My goodness, yeah.
Yeah, I saw it was actually funny. We've been watching Pop Culture Jeopardy. Don't get me started on my love of Jeopardy. If anyone doesn't know this about me, like anything trivia related, like I am all for the Jeopardy. So when the new season of Pop Culture Jeopardy came out, it was a good one. And one of the questions was around like how long it took before it was revealed that Grogu is not Baby Yoda, because everyone's like Baby Yoda, and it's like
So funny.
it's not. And I haven't even watched Mandalorian,
That's
but I
racial
know that.
profiling that people would say that
Yeah,
he's Baby Yoda.
just because they look the same.
Just because they look
Well,
alike
because
and
you've
they're the
never ever
same
seen anything
species.
that looks like Yoda
Yeah.
before, other than
I
Yoda.
mean, okay, last Star Wars thing. I'm just trying to picture Yoda like, to have a baby, there's a certain sequence of events that has to happen before that. And I'm just saying, like, how can you picture Yoda being like romantic and like, hey baby? Like you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
you know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
Like him like seducing another like green like woman, is there a woman of their kind? I don't know.
I don't know what
Um
species is Yoda even.
I forget. I honestly can't remember, but
He's one of
that's
one of a
so
kind.
funny. You walk into like Yoda's mud hut, there's like candles everywhere. He's like in his robe. He's like,
He's like, romantic tonight. I am.
yeah. Oh God.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna
All
stop it
right, we'll leave
there.
it there. Enough with the Yoda. Let
God,
us know if you're on Team Yoda as well. I'm curious to hear how many Star Wars fans we got out there. All right. So, without further ado, quick answer: should you really work out every day? Probably not, for all the reasons we outlined. If you need help devising a training program that is a 3, 4, or 5 day split and suits your specific goals so that you don't have to worry, am I doing enough? We got you covered. Send us a DM on Instagram or drop us a comment below, and we'll sort things out for you. All right? In the meantime, have a wonderful week, and we'll be back in your feeds with another episode of Truth Talks next Monday.
bye for now.